The forehand reverse spin serve is another serve you want to develop, and it can add a tremendous amount of variation and complexity to your serve. For the remainder of this training video, we're going to skip past contact point 1, which is underspin, because we already worked out the details on how to return it. And we're going to also skip past contact point 5, which is topspin. And we're just going to deal with the serves that have some type of lateral spin on the ball. Inside a dynamic serve framework, to achieve the underspin, side spin, reverse serve, you want to start with bringing your racket back so you can snap your wrist through the ball, and this is how you're going to achieve that spin, because 75% of your contact is going to be going downward and 25% of your contact is going to be going on the side of the ball. The quicker you snap your wrist, the more spin you can create, especially if you're focusing on the ratio of friction to force being 85% friction and 15% force. Most players haven't developed the wrist snap that is needed to get the proper amount of spin on the ball, and if you can't get the wrist snap, your serve will drift off the end. So make sure you develop and strengthen the wrist snap that's needed to keep the ball spinning and short. This type of serve has two functions, and you want to make sure both of those functions fit the way that you play and think before you spend the time to develop this serve. The first function is a side spin that's on the ball. It's going to make it gravitate to the forehand, so you want to make sure you're setting up a shot for that position. The second function is a side spin that's being put on the ball, has the ability to cut the table off. An example is if you serve the ball deep into the backhand, the player would have to make a racket angle before they contacted the ball, and that commitment will give you the tactical advantage. If you see yourself wanting to function in this way, then this is a serve you should develop. And the goal is to create a pathway for you to execute your attack shot from a position that you're already comfortable executing it from. For the first set of 100 serves, focus on serving down the line, and remember to make contact on the table at the end of quadrant 2 to make sure that your serve is short. And because you have some side spin on the ball, you want to be careful because the ball may drift off the side of the table. Remember to focus on your snap and how it affects the ball landing on the table twice. second set of 100 serves, move the location to the middle of the table. This will be the location that makes it more of a challenge for your opponent to figure out where they want to make the return. And the key for you is watching that racket angle. Make sure you have your serve deviate 2 inches inside the backhand line, as well as 2 inches inside the forehand line, because this is going to create a little apprehension with your opponent, and your goal is to find a weaker return. For the last set of 100, focus on making your serve to the backhand. And try to use the widest angle that allows your ball to curve but stay inside the angle. If you can get this placement spot on, you'll get more push returns than anything else, because the player won't have any leverage. Reverse side spin underspin serve return is just as unique as a reverse side spin underspin serve. And there's some key points to monitor to make the proper return. The first key point is to be able to achieve the same contact on the ball that the server has, because this will allow you to direct the ball. The second key point is to achieve the same racket angle as the server, and this will be easier on the backhand. But on the forehand, you really have to open up your position and lay your wrist open to achieve the same angle. The last key point is to direct the ball away from the forehand, which will require some positioning on your part. And the reason this is important is the spin wants to pull to the forehand, and your angle has to be sharp enough to keep the ball from popping up or going off the side of the table. So directing the ball inside quadrant 4 is going to be ideal. For the first set of 100, have your partner serve the ball to the forehand so you can work out how to return this spin. This serve going to the forehand is what you're going to see most of the time, and you want to get used to getting on the inside of the ball so you can achieve the proper angle as well as the correct contact on the ball. If you want, you can do a counter spin return to see if you can create an angle that will move your opponent off the side of the table. But remember, for this return, you're going to be going with the spin, so be careful not to pull the ball off the side of the table. If you execute this correctly, your opponent will be making an attack from a tough position, which will make it easier for you to dictate where they're going to go. second set of 100, you can have the server move the serve over to the middle, and this way you can decide to move in with your backhand and make a hook return, or move over with your forehand and make a slide return. For both of these returns, you want to place the ball in quadrant 4. For the last set of 100 serves, you can have your partner move the serve to the backhand. And if you're showing a defensive position with the backhand, you want to come in with the hook return and place the ball in quadrant 4 so you can cut off the table. Offensive position would be to use your forehand and to do the slide return, and the goal is to get the ball in quadrant 4 to still cut off the table, but to get ready for an attack. Against this serve, you have a little bit more leverage to make the return down the line to the forehand, and you have a little bit less leverage to make the return down the line using your backhand. So be aware of how much the ball pulls in case you want to change this return down the line. We're staying with reverse side spin serve, and we're moving on to contact point 3, which is side spin. Inside the dynamic serve framework, you want your racket to move through the ball completely lateral. 100% of the contact of your racket is going to be made on the equator line of the ball. This is the kind of serve that really set things off because there's so much side spin on the ball, it's very difficult to make a safe play. And almost any return that you do is going to result in creating some type of topspin play. Because this serve is a pure side spin, the ball is going to want to naturally drift out. So to keep this serve short, you want to make sure your first contact is at the end of quadrant 2. The side spin serve is curving aggressively, and you want to be aware of where you made the serve and how that spin can be returned and where it's most likely to go. Now, there's going to be some players that push this serve. There's going to be some players that flip this serve, and you want to make sure that you're serving this to the player because you want that particular return. If you're dealing with a player that's flipping this return and you want them to push it, you should serve a little bit more side under. If you're dealing with a player that's pushing the ball and you want them to flip it, you should serve a little bit more side top. So this is a situation where you can directly control how the return is going to come back, and in most cases you can also control where it comes back. For this serve, the main component to focus on is height of contact, because the ball will be curving. It'll naturally have a higher travel path, and the lower you can make contact, the more difficult it will be to return. For the first set of 100 serves, focus on serving short to the forehand. You have to pay close attention to keeping this serve short, because you're going to the forehand and all the side spinners on the ball will make it easy to be attacked if the ball drifts out. What you have to understand for this serves, there's not much of a gray area with regards to returns, and you're going to most likely produce a high ball if the ball is pushed, or you're going to produce a top spin return if it's flipped. So be ready for the person to either make a push or the person to make a flip. For the second set of 100, you want to move your serve to the middle and the backhand. And the focus for this set is being able to understand how you need to position yourself with the curve in mind and move the ball everywhere in the backhand court. When you're doing these serves, I want you to think about the position on the table that's going to create a weak return, or at least the position on the table that's going to create a push. For the last set of serves, focus on serving the ball medium and long all over the table. And the reason this is a perfect serve, if you find the right customer, is because the ball is going to land in quadrant 2 and it's going to peak in quadrant 3 and it's going to be diving right at the inlet of the ball. And most players let this ball come off the end and they roll it from under the table. And that soft shot gives you an opportunity to make a strong attack first. For the reverse side spin serve return, you do have a couple options, and the first option is to just flip the ball, and the second option is to do a slide for the forehand or a hook return for the backhand. For the first set of 100 serves, focus on flipping the reverse side spin serve with your forehand and with your backhand. This is the type of return that you really want to narrow down because you want to get used to seeing that particular serve and committing to that particular return. You have to remember, for this serve, since there's side spin on the ball, it wants to kick up. So make sure when you're doing your flip with the forehand and the backhand that you spend more time going forward than going up. You want to spend this time getting comfortable with navigating where you want your return to land on the table. And the most important thing you have to accept is that you're inviting your opponent to attack first. For the second set of 100 returns, focus on flipping the ball to quadrant 4 with your forehand and your backhand. Focusing on quadrant 4 for the flip or the slide will help you create an angle so that you have the tactical upper hand. The next serve for the reverse spin is ball contact 4, which is side spin, top spin. And inside the dynamic serve framework, to do this serve, you want to move your racket through the ball 75% laterally and 25% upwards. These two movements are a recipe for serving the ball long or high, and that's because the 75% lateral movement wants to drift out and the 25% topspin movement wants to bounce high. So the two components that you want to modify to make sure the serve is short is making sure your contact is at the height of the net and make sure your contact on the table is at the end of quadrant 2. For the first set of 100 serves, focus on making the first serve short to the forehand. And the second serve, medium to the backhand. And the goal for this set is for you to disguise how the stroke movement and the stroke approach achieve two different angles, because the ultimate goal is you don't want the player to know where you're going based on telegraphing the movement. For this set, the reason you want to serve short is you want the person to be over the table if they're going to do a push or flip. And the reason you want the serve to be medium is you want to entice the person to just roll the ball with their backhand, giving you a strong attack attempt first. last set of 100, you're going to serve the ball medium or long all over the table. And this is a situation where you're promoting topspin play from the beginning. And to get the serve medium, the contact points are going to be quadrant 2 to quadrant 2. That's going to let the ball peak in 3 and drop off the end. For the deep serve, you're going to go quadrant 3 to quadrant 3. Returning the side spin, top spin serve, you really only have one option if it's short, and that is to flip. If the serve is medium or long, you want to attack it using the loop. You can also do hybrid returns like the hook or the slide, but the main thing you have to focus on is taking your racket down even more when you do this return, because the 25% top spin that's on the ball is going to want it to pop up. And this is a difficult return to master, but you have to spend the time trying to develop it. For the first set of 100, you can have your partner serve short to the forehand, side spin, top spin, and you can start in your ready position, come in, make a flip, and get back out. And once you're comfortable with that return, you can start doing some slides to the back end. And the reason the slide is a good return is because you're hitting mostly downward on a top spin ball, and that's going to slow down how the ball gets to your opponent. And that's going to give you enough time to get out and get in position. For the second set of 100 serves, your partner can serve short anywhere, and you can focus on making a flip. And for your forehand and backhand flip, your focus is to try to create an angle with both of these shots. And if you decide to slide the ball with your forehand, you want to slide it to the backhand as well as sliding the ball to your forehand, and see if that's a type of spin that your opponent won't play well against. Major difference in these serve is the backhand serve is done from the front of the body, and you still want to go down 75% and come across 25%. And it's going to be a little bit easier to do this serve. You'll have more control over your ability to do a good snap to make strong spin. This is the type of spin you put on the ball when you want it to automatically pull to the forehand, whether it's the forehand reverse spin serve and you take 2 steps because you want to set up an attack, or you're standing and you make a serve down the line and you're already set to make an attack. So for both of these serves, you want to make sure you're creating a pattern that brings the ball to a place where you already have an attack that's in your mind. For the first set of 100 serves, you're going to be serving short to the forehand. And a great way to take even more advantage of this serve is to move your starting position over to the middle of the table, which is going to give you an even better angle into the forehand. Because this wider serve position, your opponent has to shift over even more severe into the forehand, which exposes the backhand. Because this serve is done from the front of the body, it's going to be easier to control, as well as executing a stronger wrist snap to create more spin. For the next set of serves, focus on serving to the backhand and try to use the widest angle that allows the ball to stay inside the angle. And because you're making a serve from the middle, your opponent is going to most likely shift over a little bit. And getting this serve spot on into the wide backhand will get you more push returns than anything else. For the last set, with the backhand serve, you can create more confusion by changing the placement of your serve right down the middle of the table, and your opponent will have to decide if they want to take this return with their forehand or their backhand, and your goal is to find a weaker return. that backhand underspin side spin serve is something that you want to spend the time working on, because it's a serve that's not done very often. You may find yourself making more return errors than normal, as well as giving away easy attack shots. There are a few key points to remember when returning this serve, and the first one is ratio of spin that's on the ball. And because there's 75% underspin on the ball, you should have your angle indicative of returning that spin. Now, the 25% side spin on the ball is what would make the ball pop up. So you want to make sure that you're able to have your racket angle reflected of 75% underspin and 25% side spin. The second key point is to place the ball where your opponent can't take advantage of an attack shot. Now, the best play is short, but if you can't get the ball short because of the side spin or the position, then focus on playing the ball to quadrant 4 on the forehand or quadrant 4 on the backhand if you have to go deep. For this series of serves, you don't have to go through several sets, but you do have to master what your options are and actually getting comfortable with executing all those options. Since players don't see this serve a lot, it's very easy to get comfortable with making a return that they're the most comfortable with, even if it's not the best return to make. And this set is to get you comfortable with the best tactical play. For the first set of 100 returns, you have your partner serve short everywhere, and your goal is to create a high priority to the best tactical return that fits your game. Since there's 75% underspin on the ball, the push will be the primary shot to go for. And based on where this serve is on the table is how you'll create your priority to where you should make your return. Focus on how delicate your touch needs to be to keep the ball short and low. If the serve is down the middle of the table, you're going to have enough room to create a counter spin return.
Let's go, bro. That's it, Brian. Good fight.
Now, I want to talk about shot selection and how to maximize it. If you're going to be in this area making a backhand, you can go ahead and make an attack down the line that's going to be outside of the attack radius. Or you can go to quadrant 4. Same thing goes for this area. If you're going to be making a return, it's going to be straight down the line, then you can either go wide across or you can go wide to the back end. If you go wide to back end, the ball is going to most likely come back to this area. Now here's where you have a little shot selection leverage. If you're in this position, it's going to be hard to slide the ball away from your opponent, so it's easier to go across. From this position, you can possibly go across, or you can slide the ball into quadrant 4. So this is the area where you really want to be more creative, because you have leverage to take this return that's in the middle of the table and do a flip, or slide or flip the ball into quadrant 4. So you want to understand your options when you're dealing with this forehand segment, the middle segment, and the backhand segment. From the the middle. You can also make a return short to the backhand, which will have a little bit of slide on the return. Another great return is to make a slide directly into quadrant 4 with the backhand, and this will be a good play that cuts off your opponent, and it opens up backhand exchanges for you to possibly make your backhand attack down the line first. Backhand, remember that if you angle incorrectly, the ball will pull off the side. So make sure that you're angled inside the inline with the focus on making your return drop twice on the table. For the backhand side spin serve, you want to sweep your racket through the ball laterally. Also, you have to remember, this is done from the front of you, so the more you snap your wrist, the more spin you can create that will control the travel path as well as the placement. This serve will be curving aggressively, and you want to be aware of the location and how that affects where the ball can be played. Now, this serve is going to be pushed or it's going to be flipped. So make sure you have the appropriate shot ready based on those choices. For the first set of 100 serves, focus on serving short to the forehand. The main component to focus on for this serve is height of contact, and because you're going to be making a lateral spin and the ball is going to be curving, it's going to have a higher travel path than underspin that typically slows down and plays lower once it gets on the other side of the table. For the second set of serves, focus on serving to the middle and the backhand. The main component to focus on for this serve is first bounce on the table, because whatever placement you create will determine where the serve lands in the backhand court. For this serve, you have to look for the weak return or the serve placement on the table that makes your opponent push, because that'll be the easiest way for for you to set up your attack. For the side spin serve return, since the spin is on the equator line of the ball, you find a real challenge trying to execute a push. So your only two quality returns will be the flip or the slide. These returns have to be attached to a strong understanding of placements, because for both of these returns, you're going to promote top spin play right from the beginning of the point. For the first set of 100 returns, your partner is going to serve a side spin short everywhere on the table, and your goal is to create the correct shot selection based on where the serve is, because this is going to be attached to the type of sequence of play you're trying to set up. Once you become very comfortable with controlling this spin, you can start doing the counter spin return that actually goes with the spin of the serve that your opponent has made. And the great thing about this for your attack sequence is so much side spin is on the ball that it's hard for your opponent to play away from you. So once you do the counter spin return, you're in a much better position to know that the ball is going to be going back to your forehand. If this serve goes to the forehand, you want to be able to weigh your options to where you can make a flip down the line. Or if you flip cross court, the sequence of play you're trying to set up is making that particular shot against a person that doesn't have a strong opening attack, or a person that doesn't play well on quadrant 4 inside the forehand. If you're going to be playing in the middle of the table, then you can create two severe angles by going wide to quadrant 4 in the backhand, or wide to quadrant 4 on the forehand. And if your opponent is static, you can possibly go to the middle, and on the backhand you can either go to quadrant 4 on the backhand, or directly down the line outside of their attack radius. What you have to accept about a lateral spin serve is that the ball wants to drift out. So the main component you want to pay attention to is where does the first bounce land, because in competition, because of nerves, this serve has a tendency to drift out. So if you're able to identify that the first bounce is landed in quadrant 2, you can already get ready to make an attack that's going to be right over the end line in quadrant 3, and you'll find yourself making this a very important times in the match.
Good job, Stick. Come on, come on.
For the top spin side spin serve, 75% of the movement is going to be going upwards, and 25% of the movement is going to be going laterally. This is a serve you hope your opponent is used to pushing, because it will create some easy attack setups for you. You have to really monitor the height at which you make contact, because this serve has 75% of the movement going upwards that makes the ball want to drift out, and 25% of the movement is going laterally that makes the ball want to kick up. For the first set of 100 serves, focus on making your serve to the forehand with the emphasis on the ball being short. And you want to make sure that you don't serve it too high, because it can be flipped, and if it's too long, it can be attacked. All roads lead to a flip, because the push and the slide won't get it done against 75% topspin and 25% lateral spin. So be prepared for topspin play in the form of a flip. Now that you've established a short serve with the first set, for the second set of serves, you want to make your first serve short to the forehand, and the second serve medium to the backhand. The good thing about the medium serve is because you are shifted over to the position in the middle of the table, your opponent will end up moving also. And when you make your serve medium to the backhand, it's going to be more difficult for them to go from crowding this position to making a step around. And where you may encounter some problems is if they take this return with a backhand from the middle, you'll also find that you have to take 1-2 steps, 3-4 steps in a pivot to get to the attack. So make sure as soon as you make the serve and they're not going to take a forehand, start pivoting. For the last set of 100 serves, you simply want to rip your serve, side spin, top spin from quadrant 3 to quadrant 3 in the forehand, and quadrant 3 to quadrant 3 to the backhand. For this serve, you're simply saying, let's play topspin shots immediately. And typically you want to do this serve against a player that doesn't have strong opening attacks. the spin on the ball kicks up, you really do run out of options. So for the side spin, top spin, return, your best option is the flip. For the first set of 100 returns, you can have your partner focus on serving the ball short everywhere, and you can create the correct shot selection with the flip or the slide if you can get the ratio correctly. Because there's so much spin on the ball that makes the ball want to pop up or come off the end, the main thing to focus on is making sure that you make contact at the height of the net and snap forward. This will ensure that you're creating a shot that's driving forward, that has force on it, as opposed to a ball that you're hitting soft that's actually not going to travel deep on the table, which will make it easier for your opponent to attack through your return. Don't be afraid to find an angle that allows you to flip the ball into the wide forehand, because that's your best play. What you have to think about if you're going to flip the ball wide is using a softer effort, because it'll allow you to play the ball away from your opponent instead of to your opponent.
Yes, come on.
The hammer serve, or the tomahawk serve, is another addition that you can add to your arsenal, and the main goal is to get the ball to pull to your forehand so you can set up your attack. This serve can be very deceptive because you're going to be coming across the side of the ball, and you can either make contact coming up, going lateral, or going downward. If you execute this serve to different locations on the table, as well as starting from different locations on the table and varying the depth, you can really get yourself in position to set up your attack. We're staying with contact point 2, and the pattern is now going to be reversed. And since we're on the way up and moving lateral, it's going to be 25% top spin and 75% lateral. And if you're able to do a medium toss, you can control this serve better. For the first set of 100 serves, you want to make all your serves inside the forehand court, and what you want to monitor is how the side spin pulls. This top spin, lateral spin serve requires you to start with your racket below the ball, so you're able to get the leverage to go up 25% and around the ball 75%. And to most effectively do this serve, you want to make sure your stance is low, so the serve has a low trajectory. and make it a point to put some friction on your serve so that you can better control the travel path. Getting the serve to go from forehand corner to a forehand corner is a fantastic way to use all of the table, and the more you can get the ball to curve into the forehand court without going off the sideline, the better. Another position you can serve to is to the quadrant 4 position right off the end line of the table, which would require the player to step into the corner and make an attempt from around the table, which would limit their ability to go down the line, and it also would expose the backhand. Since we're already talking about the topspin and lateral spin serve, we'll talk about how to return it. And you really only have one option, that is to come in and to do a flip. You could possibly do a slide. The issue is the lateral spin that's on the ball is going to have it curving into the forehand. So to do a slide, you don't have as much leverage and the ball is more likely to pull. So you want to make sure if you're going to attempt a slide, you want to get inside the angle so that you can play the ball away from where it's coming from. So now you know what you have to do to make ball contact 2. So for the second set of 100 serves, you can focus on ball contact 3, which is pure lateral spin. Mixing in these serves raises the level of complexity, and you want to get accustomed to which movement creates what type of serve and where that's most likely to go on the table. For the serve return, you can focus on the flip if the ball is short. And you can focus on the loop if the ball comes off the side. And you have to remember for both of these returns, your main type of contact is going to be friction over force, because there's a lot of lateral and topspin on the ball. That ball wants to pull out. So being able to put friction on your flip keeps the ball down, and being able to put a good amount of spin on your loop keeps the ball on the table and not going off the end. For this return, you have to absolutely create an angle, because there's no way that you can't telegraph your movement before you make contact with the ball. So if the player makes this serve, you want to try to angle the ball into the middle of the backhand or wide backhand, because the server wants this to pull to the forehand. So you have to remember, there's some side spin that you have to navigate through for this return, and your best tactical play is to try to get the return to the wide backhand, or at least to the middle, so your opponent has to travel a great distance before they can set up an attack shot. For the last set of 100 serves, you want the first 50 serves to be underspin, side spin, all over the table. For this serve, you want to focus on all the different placements on the table that will make it easy for you to set up your attack shot. For the last set of 50 serves, you can focus on changing your starting location and see how that affects your ability to set up this attack shot. If you want to do a bonus set of 100 serves, you can take this same serve and you can put it inside your classic movement, which I call the Andre Philemon. Returning the underspin side spin serve, there is some underspin on the ball, so you can make an attempt to push the ball short. But you want to pay attention to how much side spin is on the ball and adjust your racking accordingly so that you don't pop the ball up. In addition to that, you want to make sure that the return has enough leverage to keep the ball going from where your opponent wants it to go. Against this serve, you can still do a flip, but you're going to need height over the net and snap on your flip. against lefty serves is a very rare occurrence that'll happen in a tournament, and spending the time focusing on how to play against these type of serves will be something that you'll thank yourself for later. On the average, most lefties get 2 to 3 points a game just because the players haven't seen those serves enough. And there's some layers you have to get through to play this serve properly. And the first one is actually identifying the spin that's on the ball. And the second one is placing the ball where you want it. The next thing you want to focus on is how you position yourself for this serve, because if you use the classic position as if you're playing against a right-handed player, the wide forehand is going to be exposed. So you want to move over anywhere from 4 to 6 inches to make sure that the forehand is covered. Finding a partner to create these serves can be a problem, but you do have a couple options. And the first option is you can set your robot up to make these serves. And the second option, you can have your partner or your coach use their backhand serve and come to the forehand so it can create this type of spin to that angle. For the first set of 100 serves, you can have your partner serve short everywhere, side spin, underspin, and you're either going to do a slide or a push on the forehand, or you're going to either do a little bit of a hook return or a short push with the backhand. And if the ball goes to your forehand, you want to try to slide the ball into quadrant 4, which is the wide backhand. That's going to make it more difficult for them to step around. Or if you get leverage in the middle of the table, you want to try to hook or slide the ball into quadrant 4, which is their wide forehand, so they have to take 2 steps and make an attack, exposing the table. For the second set of 100 serves, you're still going to have your partner serving short anywhere, but now they can mix in side spin with the side under. Whenever you see the side spin, you can either do a slide or a flip. It's important to be able to identify what type of spin is on the serve, because you're going to need to make a split-second decision about what return you should do, as well as where that return should go. For the last set of 100 serves, you can have your partner mix in the side top along with the side spin and the side under for the first 50 serve. And this mix of spins and placements will make it easier for you to acclimate in competition, so you can neutralize the 2 to 3 points a game that the left-handed player gets. For the last 50 serves of set 3, you can have your partner focus on serving the ball deep to quadrant 3 in the forehand, wide to quadrant 4 in the forehand, or deep to quadrant 3 on the backhand. And you can work out a more neutral position that allows you to play the backhand, take 2 steps, get to the forehand in quadrant 3, or take 2 steps and get to the forehand in quadrant 4.
Let's go, come on. That's it, Brian. Come on.
There's some hybrid serves that you won't see very often that can cause you some problems, and one of them is the sweeping right to left serve. And because this serve motion is sweeping from right to left, the ball is going to want to gravitate into the wide backhand, just like the classic forehand toss serve. And this is a more difficult serve to serve side top or side spin because you have to start so far from under the ball, so you're going to mostly see side under. When you see players bending down to do this service, because they need to make contact at the height of the net to make sure that the serve is low, and because that movement is going to be coming down so much, approximately 75% movement is underspin. So if the ball is long, you can go ahead and make an attack, and if you have to make a push because the serve is short, you want to make sure you have the right angle that's adjusting to 75% underspin and 25% side spin. The only hybrid return I haven't talked about is Chiquita backhand, also known as banana, which was made popular by Peter Corbel in the 1996 Olympic Games. He was able to come over the table where normal people make short returns, and he was able to flip his wrist, making a lot of side spin on the ball. And this return was so new that he beat several world-class players to make it to the semifinals of the Olympic Games in Atlanta. In 2002, you saw Wang Hao, the first permanent reverse backhand loop Chinese player, take this return and advance it even more. And soon after that, you saw all the top Chinese players make it a regular staple in their game. And soon it spread throughout the world, even to the point to where now you see players making this return from every position on the table. If you're serious about developing this return, there's several things you're going to have to do. And the first one is you want to be able to position yourself properly. The next one is you want to make sure that you start with your racket under the ball. The third thing is you want to make sure you can add a tremendous amount of wrist snap to the ball so that you create the friction that creates a upward trajectory over the net. And the last thing you want to make sure you do is that you position it so that you don't play the ball off the side of the table. For this exercise, you can have your coach pretty much serve short everywhere, and you can start working out all the details of these components so you can figure out where this return starts and finishes, and when you do the return, what type of shot is going to come back. There's 3 types of pips, and you're going to be able to set up your serves against those pips if you remember the number one thing, and that is how that pip actually functions. There are too many types of long pips with sponge, no sponge, different waffle cuts that create different outcomes. But the main thing you need to understand about the pip is that when the ball makes contact with the racket, the pip will buckle. And the reason that the pip will buckle is because the pip is so thin that when the ball hits it, it's going to buckle to the left, to the right, up, or down. And when the ball makes contact with the rubber that makes contact with a cluster of pips, they're going to all buckle in different directions. And that's why you get the weird bouncing ball that may go to the left one rally and then go to the right the other rally. And the best way to take advantage of that pip buckling so that you don't get something that you can't control is by serving from quadrant 2 to quadrant 2, because the ball is going to land in quadrant 2 and it's going to peak in quadrant 3, and it's going to be diving at the end of the end line. So what's going to happen is when that player makes contact here, you're going to get a more classic return that's going to pop up that you know doesn't have a lot of spin because the pips have buckled. Now, if you were to serve something like quadrant 3 to quadrant 3, and the person is able to chop the ball harder, then they'll be able to create more of a classic return. Even if it doesn't have a lot of spin, it'll have more of a classic return because they were able to use this speed. So the best serve is a no spin serve from quadrant 2 to quadrant 2. Now, if you want to serve from quadrant 3 to quadrant 3, you actually want to serve heavy underspin, because when that player makes a chop from a heavy underspin serve, the spin actually reverses. So what you're going to get back is a heavy topspin shot. And that's something that you can take advantage of, because you got to remember, when it comes to pips, you're not playing the player, you're playing the technology. So if you can take advantage of making that player chop a heavy underspin serve and the ball popping up, you already know for whatever height it is, it has heavy topspin on it. If you're deciding that you want to serve short, you want to make sure that you don't give your opponent an angle, because this is going to be the easiest return that they can create, because they have a lot of leverage over the net. And again, the pip is going to buckle. So if you're going to serve the ball short, don't let your opponent create an angle. The medium and short pip characteristics are almost similar, and the first characteristic is that the pip does not buckle when the player makes contact. So this is going to be looked at more of an attacking rubber, to where when the person makes a flat hit, because they're able to snap it, because the pip doesn't buckle, it's going to have a dead spin. The second characteristic is that both of these rubbers can create much higher degrees of spin than the long pips. So the best serve to do against the short or the medium pip is going from quadrant 3 to quadrant 3, because if you can get the ball as close to the end line, most players are going to smother the push, and that smothering of the push allows the ball to pop up, and that's how you can make the attack. But you want to make sure that it's heavy underspin, because if there's not any spin on the ball, it can be easily attacked with short or medium pips, because both of those rubbers are less affected by spin. The worst serve to make is quadrant 2 to quadrant 2, because the ball is going to be landing in quadrant 2 and peaking in quadrant 3, and it's going to be a serve that can be easily attacked. So you want to avoid quadrant 2 to quadrant 2. And quadrant 1 to quadrant 1, which is the short serve, is really more of a serve that won't really create a lot of negative plays or positive plays, to be a little bit more neutral. But you want to make sure that it's some type of good underspin on the ball that's low, because if the ball is high, the pips can go ahead and get over the top, because again, short and medium pips aren't as affected by spin. This is the end of serve and serve return training for table tennis, and I hope you enjoyed this long process of fully developing your serves in hopes of raising your level. The reason this video is so extensive is there's so many different types of spin that you can put on the ball, and there's also so many different ways you can return that spin. And this video takes you through the entire process, so you won't see a serve that you don't understand how to identify the spin, as well as where you make the perfect return. I want to take this time to thank Richard, Nelson, and Golf for their participation in the DTT movement. And finally, I want to thank you, the players, the coaches, and enthusiasts, for making the ultimate investment in your improvement. Live to play, loop to win, dynamic table tennis.